Welcome, everyone. My name is Amanda Murphy, and I'm here with Lawand Jenkins and Uniqueka Walcott. I have questions for them today around Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, my Triangle Campaign, Woman of the Year campaign. So I'll go ahead and jump in. This first question is for you, Uniqueka. Tell me about your personal experience with blood cancer. What do you mean? So you and I were talking the other day. What did you mean when you said you didn't get your teeth until you were pretty old? I didn't realize leukemia could cause something like this. Can you tell me a little more about that?
Well, part of some of the issues I was facing with the childhood leukemia was that it was eating the enamel off my teeth, and so they were kind of coming out pretty fast, and so the doctors were concerned about how that would impact my adult set of teeth. So they took out my top, like I think like 4 teeth.
Four.
And yeah, and so I didn't get them they didn't come back in for like years. Like people would tease me, like the little Christmas song, "All I Want for Christmas Is My Two Front Teeth." Like
Oh,
that went on
no.
for years. They tormented me, and now I have like the best revenge.
Yeah, you do. You have a captivating smile now.
Thank you.
Sorry. Were there any other reactions that aren't like typical common knowledge with leukemia as a child?
Mom, you have to speak on that one. I don't know too much more.
Our biggest experience was they gave us all the precautions as to watching her diet, her intake, what she was exposed to. We had the risk where if she fell or she, bruised herself or anything, it was an action for immediate concern. If she started bleeding, it was an action of immediate concern because not knowing exactly, no family history knowledge at that point, they weren't sure what to tell us and which way to expect things to go. So they basically just gave us extreme cautionary measures for her.
Okay.
And by the time she was 3, we had to start explaining to her why she couldn't do everything everybody else could do. That was a big challenge.
That sounds extremely challenging. Having kids of my own, 3 is when they start to kind of like develop their independence and personalities and try and climb the walls.
Yes. And she was a go-getter. Her favorite thing was running all the time. She always wanted to run, and thank God she wasn't clumsy, but she wanted to race with her siblings, and it's like, you can't do that. You can't race with the older kids. And she didn't quite understand that, so we had to sit down and explain to her, you have this blood disease, and she's like, well, what is it going to do? And, we'd have to explain and say, at this point, they're looking at remission, so they didn't want to give us all 12 bell alarms, but at the same time, it's like you have to be careful because with her growing and having taken on more activities and exposure to things out of our control, she may be at a friend's house, they may give her something she shouldn't have. She may be exposed to kind of chemical or something where it wouldn't bother anybody else, but she would have an adverse reaction to it. So we had to be extremely cautious about explaining to her, and she wanted to know why was everything. Everything was why. And even with the doctors talking to us, like they said, it was only so much she could comprehend at 3. So it was more of a matter of us explaining to her and trying, watching what she does and tell her no. Sometimes we had to just tell her, you can't do that because you have leukemia. And fortunately, by 3, she understood what it meant. She even showed her biggest understanding. I'm different. My blood's special is the way we explained it to her.
That's a good way to explain it. Your blood's special. So do you remember the day you got the blood cancer diagnosis?
12 hours old. They told us at the hospital she was 12 hours old. When they did all the blood work in the hospital initially, they came back and told us she was 12 hours old. And when they said to us, it was like we had no idea what they were saying to us. And we both instantly went to this like, oh God, what's going to happen? Is she going to be okay? But at the same time, it's like, let's be realistic. Let's start doing some research. Let's see. And like they say, at first the explanations was she could have possibly taken on too many of my white blood cells. So they didn't want to say 100%, but at that point, that's what the test initially said. They would go back and test her at 48 hours. And they came back at 48 hours telling us the same thing again. So we kept asking us, well, how many times are y'all going to test us? And at this point, we're just going to monitor everything. She was in neonatal for 14 days. So by the time she came home, it was clear to us that's what was going on and what it was. And they kept asking us about a family history. Neither one of us had knowledge of family history on either side of the family. She was probably 10, 11 years old before we discovered that it was on both sides of our family. My mother's biological mother had it, and his father's aunt on his mother's side had it. And
Interesting.
ironically, she's the only one of the 3 children that came up with it.
That's really interesting. Is it I didn't realize it was genetic.
I don't think that was my thought. I didn't think it was necessarily genetic, but when they were saying that her possibly taking on my blood, so my white blood counts or what have you, figuring I gathered it had to be somewhere in the bloodstream.
That is so interesting.
Because even they were explaining her dad has her dad's O blood type is O, so therefore if it came to a transfusion, he would be the best possibility for her.
I can't imagine how you must have felt handing that sweet little baby and then being told that information. Did they have a lot of research then? Sorry.
This was over 30
I don't
years
think
ago.
research was advanced as far as you would like to have been, because at that point, you're still seeing the little things where you go to the different stores and they had them things where you put the quarters in to help with the research. You didn't see a lot of political campaigns about it on TV or things like that. You didn't see a lot of it in the news media, because even when they told us that her teeth had to come out, because we were wondering why her baby teeth were coming in as fast as they were coming in, they were chipping away. So it's like, what is causing this? They had her to go to she went to the cancer specialist. He sent her to a dentist that dealt with cancer patients, and he's the one that extracted her teeth. They wouldn't even let us go back with her. She was back there 3 hours when they were taking her teeth out, and we couldn't go with her.
Oof.
That sounds terrible.
It was a scary thing. The grace of God, she was more mature and independent than she should have been. And being that she was a miracle baby to start with, because they said I couldn't have children. So it was like kind of like pick and choose your battle. She's here, and that's a miracle in itself. So we're just gonna count on another miracle coming through, and grace of God, we got it.
Yeah. Oh, at least I'm not scared of the dentist.
That's good. Do you have any advice, Lawand, for those facing a blood cancer diagnosis now?
My biggest thing was do research, due diligence and research, and start with the family background, because like they said, you can say they don't know for sure if it's hereditary or not. It depends on who you talk to and which side of you'll hear. But at the same time, given the empathy of it when she had it, and the fact that she's been in remission all these years, my thing would be do as much research as you can as far as family history, because somebody else had and the family has it. It may give you a little bit better idea of what to expect, because the way we found out, well, my mother's mother passed from it, where her father's aunt, she actually went to remission and lived a full life, but it came back before she passed. So they didn't say that was the direct cause of death, but it was a contributing factor to it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I just tell anybody, whatever you do, make sure you do due diligence and research as far as you can, and don't be afraid to ask a million questions. No question is a dumb question other than the one you don't ask.
I think that's really good advice. Because I think there's a lot more information out there now surrounding these blood cancers. So yeah, educating yourself is like the only defense, honestly.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, as I say, everything can't be Googled for a truthful answer either. So when you Google something to find out, if it generates a question and you're not sure, don't assume that Google is correct. It can be put out there by anybody. The research may not even apply to your child, because there's different forms that they can come in. You have different stages of it.
Right.
So therefore, ask the doctors. Anything that you have questions about, ask the doctor. And whatever you do, please talk to your child. Let your child know, so that they don't get the impression that there's something wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with them. They're just created differently. And therefore, they have to understand they have to take different precautions.
I think that's beautiful. I think a lot of people don't communicate with their kids enough. So I think especially surrounding something that's this life-changing, it's really important to have those conversations in little kid words to help them understand what they're facing.
And the doctors were very instrumental in helping us, because there was really no literature to tell us how to talk to a child. It's just basically, okay, explain it to her. We told us citizen scenarios. Think if you were 3 years old, how would you want somebody to tell you this, and how would it register? And me and her dad literally role played with each other. So if one of us got caught off guard and got a question for her and the other one wasn't around, you can't project everything to wait till your mom gets home, wait till your dad gets home, we'll talk about this. She had a valuable question. It was her life. and I think the most important thing was acknowledging to her every year she got older, explaining to her, you have to have your blood test every year, and explaining to her what type of blood test she needed. So she knew automatically when she goes for any kind of physical, I need a CBC 12 with blood specs or with the specs on it. So she automatically knew what she needed. So if anything ever happened and she wasn't with us, she knew this is what you have to do right now because of my condition. And even in adulthood, it makes a difference with her insurance, because insurance actually still pays for it, because even with her going in remission, the initial diagnosis makes it eligible for her insurance to continue paying for the test.
Yeah. And that's a huge plus. And I, I've talked to providers even now, they're like, yeah, it's been like 30 years, but if you really, this is something you want to do, they, emphasize to me, it's especially important. Like if I wanted to have children, to kind of have like a kind of a back history of what my typical counts were, so that something is odd, during a pregnancy, they would have a reference point. That's another reason it was so important for me to continue throughout the years. But yeah, the insurance, thank God.
I can only
Thank you
imagine
for
the cost
remembering.
associated with it. And yeah, and then remembering all the details.
Yeah.
Well, so it sounds like this was a very challenging thing for you guys, but you did things to stay positive, which included speaking to Uniqueka about the condition and how to manage it. So were there other things you guys did to stay positive throughout the process?
As she entered school, instead of just talking to the teachers, because they had to be careful about how Uniqueka interacted with everyone, I would go in and talk to the teachers. By the time she got to second grade, the teacher wanted us to come and explain to the class, what Uniqueka's situation was. And then, if she had been with these kids since preschool, the parents were more receptive to understanding and hearing what it was. And a couple of the parents even told me, so why didn't you tell us this when she was in preschool? We had bus days on the bus riding with her. But the thing of it was, she always had to sit behind the bus drive. So if anything happened, they were aware right then, and it wasn't a question mark.
Right.
But if they said that was a concern, some parents had, they say, fortunately, their kids didn't have it, but just to have the knowledge of it and knowing that way, if other people came, you don't feel like, oh, I can't interact with that kid, or you're afraid to interact with them. By talking to the other parents and talking to the children, it made them more at ease, and it made it easier for them to explain to their children about different things that may be going on. They say it kind of opened the door for communication and how to talk to a child about serious issues.
I think we all need to do that as parents for any sort of, leukemia, tree nut allergy, autism. Like there's all different things that children face. And when parents don't talk about it, it makes it even scarier for teachers and friends and the kid themselves. Like, I think that's really smart.
Yeah.
It does. It has a big impact on it, because I think the biggest impact is to realize how many people are not sure what information you should give a child, because that was our first thought too, is how do you explain this to a child? We actually had to consult with the doctors and the social workers, and they explained to us, it's a question if you want to tell her or not, but just remember, you have to be 24 hours on guard to make sure nothing ever happens. So giving her some control over her own life had to start early. We had to explain, okay, at first it was just, okay, you have a special thing going on in your blood, and with the special things in your blood, it's magical. You can't hurt yourself, because if you activate that magic, we have to go to the hospital for the doctors to put the magic back in the box. And that's literally how we started explaining to her. We showed her the rabbit. We got to the rabbit magic chips with the rabbit thing, and that's how we started off with it. And after she got the concept and why she had to get these blood tests all the time, the doctors, when she would act up and wouldn't take the blood test because she was afraid of needles at some point, the doctors would tell us, we got to test the blood to make sure that the magic hasn't gotten away. And she actually bought that till she was probably 10, 11 years old. It was like, okay, I don't really believe this is what you're saying, but I know it's the reason behind it. So she kind of gave me a little grace with that part.
Look, sometimes I was so terrified of needles. I'll be honest with you, Amanda. There were times I'd lock myself in the bathroom.
Yeah,
the doctor's
episode with the doctor for that.
I don't blame you.
I locked myself in the bathroom.
No, she was in there 3 hours, and we trying to coast her out of there. It's like literally, you can go she gets to the door. Well, I'm gonna come out. It got to the point when she went to the doctor, she must go to the bathroom before we leave the house. She could not have anything to drink, because she would always say, I gotta pee, I can't wear my clothes. So you had to let her go to the bathroom.
So she's like, I've got this figured out.
Oh man. Did I?
And she knew when she learned the builders when she pulled up, she knew what it was. So it's kind of like, okay, we even switched labs on her. It's just like she just knew this Sixth Sense, this is another lab. They finna get me.
They're gonna get the magic from my blood. I like that story though, because kids are so drawn to like magic and being special. Like sometimes it's
Yeah.
hard being special though.
Yeah.
Uniqueka, do
You know,
you
so
what? Sorry.
but that's like with kids with autism and things like that. Instead of saying they have disabilities, you want to teach them they have special abilities. So it was basically our way of making sure it's something special. So therefore, it's nothing to be afraid of.
I like that.
That's
Yeah,
really
the whole
cool.
word disability it's just wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
So Uniqueka, do you have any advice you'd give folks facing a blood cancer diagnosis? I know that you weren't really cognizant of a blood cancer diagnosis at 12 hours, but still, like,
I think honestly, like the best advice I can give people is like just to stay hopeful because you don't know what tomorrow brings. Like, I mean, here I am, well in my 30s, I'm married, I've lived like a full kind of, awesome life. Like I wouldn't trade any of it. But I mean, could you imagine if my parents had, maybe given me some sort of discouragement in the process? Like how much different, would I've lived life, would I've, been just scared to kind of breathe, honestly. So like, I'm just grateful they didn't treat me like a bubble kid. So I just, I think that's the biggest thing. It's like, I hope that this is the opportunity for people to see the story and realize that the positive possibilities are a reality and that people can kind of take this as a reference point on the bad days and go, look, it works out and it does get better.
I like that. I agree too. I think it all depends on how you frame the situation, because if you were a bubble kid, then you probably wouldn't have experienced a lot of the things you've experienced, but you knew how to manage your situation. And so your parents probably got a lot less stressed out the older you got, because they were like, we know she's going to take this seriously. We know she knows what to say if something happens. My daughter has a anaphylactic tree nut allergy, and I trust her implicitly because she even asked me sometimes, she's like, did you check the package? And I'm like, yes, I did. But she knows it better than I do because it's her life. And I may not be here always. I want to be here always, but you have to empower these kiddos. So,
Yeah.
All right, so
that's
you
the most
need
important thing.
empower them. Yeah. Little independent monsters. That's what I call mine.
Yes, dear God. And they learn a lot faster than you want them to. They catch on quicker.
Yeah. Well, Uniqueka, how can people support you and Leukemia and Lymphoma Society?
Well, I am a part of your campaign this year for Woman of the Year. Yes. And you reached out to me and said, hey, can you support me? And I was like, yeah. I was like, let's try it. So I have a link I'm going to share in the comments about where you can donate to the campaign. All the funds are going to go towards research so that we can help kick cancer's butt.
Boom. All right. Well, I
make sure parents are aware there are hospitals that treat children even if they don't have the financial resources. That makes a world of difference too.
That's a really good point. And Leukemia and Lymphoma does that. They have lots of different programs to support parents and children and just folks fighting leukemia or blood cancers as well. So I really appreciate y'all's time today. Happy Sunday. And
Happy Sunday.
Thanks for being a part of this with me.
Thank you.
Y'all have a great day.
Thank you for being the Woman of the Year. Thank you.
Yeah,
You have a blessed one.
Thank you. Thank you
Bye-bye.
for saying that. Bye, guys.
All right. See you soon. Bye-bye.